What is up? Welcome to the American Peloton. I am Jonathan Crain. I'm a mediocre Cat 2 cyclist from Birmingham, Alabama.
And I am Ben Edwards, former elite mountain biker, head coach at Skyway Cycling, and team director at Skyway, presented by Domestique Coffee.
We did a little bit of mountain biking this week. You and I did a
Yeah,
24-hour race over the weekend, but
we did.
I, we don't even have time to talk about that because we've got so much other stuff.
No.
Because we were getting ready for that, we kind of bumped this episode a week, and then there's a whole video about that, our 24-hour race on my YouTube channel. So just go find that. Maybe I'll put one of those cards that comes up if you're watching on YouTube. For the audio listener, Jonathan Crain on YouTube, go look me up or just search for this podcast on YouTube. You'll find it. I
Yeah.
feel like we should say up top, we never do the thing, like and subscribe, all that stuff. You can find
No.
Ben's coaching services below,
Yeah.
all that.
All the social media promo stuff out of the way early. Perfect.
Yeah, that's how you're supposed to do it, which, like, I never do that. I always forget. But today we're getting it in correctly. But swiftly, we're moving on to all the many things that have happened in American bike racing in the interim period while we were racing since our last episode. We're going to start with Nats. So there have been two sets of national championships. So we'll go all the way back to amateur national championships because there are a lot of people we've talked with and about and to on this show that were involved. You just ran some of those down. You want to hit some highlights?
Yeah. I'll start off with the crit because that was um, Brendan Fury taking the win for Miami Blazers, which he's the monk. Like I think he's a deserving winner of that.
I think
Evan,
I
Mc-
said when we were talking about Sunny King, one of the races we were talking about, I was like, you can spot Fury because he's been wearing those American flag hand up gloves all this year. And
right.
I think I like jokingly said maybe he's foreshadowing that he's gonna become national champion this year. I wish I had that clip ready to pull, but I'm pretty sure I said that at some point. I definitely pointed out the American flag gloves, but he has made good on his American flag gloves.
Yeah, for sure. And then Evan McQuirk for Butcher Box in second, which we kind of said Butcher Box being better than we thought they would be. They've definitely really stepped up this year and have been putting down some really, really big results. Evan beat Michael Hernandez, who was in third for American Cycling. Another huge one. He's a former national champion, former winner of this race. So big for him to kind of beat Michael there. Matt Winstead, who we had on the last episode of the show, he was in fourth. And then rounding out the top five was Taylor Warren for CS Velo.
Yeah, crazy that Winstead was the guest on the previous episode of this show, and he was fourth in the crit, and I believe he's also on the road race results, right? You want to run
Yeah,
those down real quick?
yeah, he is. So for the road race, I'm gonna butcher the last name Ensek.
Yeah, that's it.
Ama Ensek for CS Velo taking the men's road race win.
That
So,
was surprising to me. I want to talk about that for a second
I
because
agree. Yeah,
he's been so. I've known a few people like this in my racing career that are just like completely hot and cold, but he is like truly like winning the race or out the back. Like he
yeah,
was at Sunny King. He's racing with CS Velo this year, and he was at Sunny King with them and was just like completely non-factor, just like tail gunning the whole race.
yeah.
I think we saw him move up one time, and because of that and all the other like national level races he's done this year, I kind of thought he was maybe. I mean, he's in college. I thought maybe he was focusing on school or
Hmm.
something. I don't know, but just not on it. And then to turn around and win not even the crit but the road race too. Like
Yeah,
not really been known as a road racer. He has been doing a lot of collegiate stuff with his Milligan team, but
yeah. And he won collegiate road race nationals too. So I was kind of thinking maybe he was peaking for that,
yeah,
um, and then kind of tapering off later this year. But again, he's just hot or cold, right?
yeah.
He's
It's
either
like
winning or out the bat.
yeah, exactly. Maybe maybe the only things on his like goals this year were to win road race national championships, and he had two of those on the docket, and he won them.
Yeah, that's entirely possible. Second place, Johnny Brown for Blazers. Not a huge surprise there for him to be on the podium. He's been one of the strongest road racers in the country for a
Yeah,
while.
I'm not surprised at all. Having raced him at that Nashville race a few weeks ago, where he lapped the field, and then I sat. He was first or second, rotating with Jeremiah Stoller from Nashville, and I sat fourth wheel for literally 20 minutes while the two of them drug us around at 29, 30 miles an hour
Yeah,
by
right,
themselves after lapping the field.
right.
So I kind of knew he was on one, like from
Yeah,
firsthand experience.
yeah. And I think we talked about him even last episode, Matt saying how crazy strong him and his brother Nate, who Nate's been in the World Tour, but that's
Yeah,
an aside. Third place, Miles Hubbard for Specialized Project 74. That's a team we don't know too much about, but they have been putting up some results this year, so we should be looking more into them.
I think they're
But
kind of like a Mike's Bikes in the sense that they're like a pretty big, pretty well
okay,
funded team that keeps it kind of West Coast. Like
yeah,
they use the resources they have to like stay out there generally. So slightly surprised to see them. This was in Roanoke, the
yeah,
amateur. Now these are the amateur national championships. There's that whole debate of like what makes an amateur or a pro, or and this discussion. I think that there really should just be one national championship if you're a Cat 1, and we have this like arbitrary delineation. And
yeah.
there's not even an amateur national championship on the women's side. This is like only a men's event.
It's weird and convoluted, and like the distinction isn't great because to be in pro nats the rule is you have to team has to have a UCI license or a domestic elite license, or if you're like a former world tour pro, like you can get an exception if you're like former world tour or like really really strong and feel like you need to be there.
Yeah,
But a lot of these domestic elite teams are like decidedly amateur teams, and they double dip a little bit.
yeah,
This is a gripe I had when I was racing mountain bikes, where like Cat ones could race the pro field, but like I didn't think they should. Like I felt like that would be two separate things.
yeah.
But
I think I said this in our group chat in the Skyway Domestique Discord channel at some point. We were talking about the weirdness of this distinction. And I said that amateur nats should be before pro nats every year. And if you compete in amateur nats, you shouldn't be allowed to compete in pro nats. So
yeah,
that's just
agree.
you can't roll the dice two times. And I think that would keep, because like you said, a lot of teams are double dipping, and we saw a lot of teams and a lot of people, maybe even team, like if your team has people competing in amateur, your team cannot have people competing in pro. I think uh, that would make all of the best people in one race at one time, and then less confusion about like two stars
Yeah,
and stripes jerseys floating around. Not to take anything away. I mean, we're talking about it right now because it was a really big, hotly contested race,
yeah,
especially this year. Like, there's a lot of prestige with it because the field was so stacked with a lot of the same guys who would end up racing pro nats.
yeah. And with that, I do want to give Legion some points here because in the
Yeah,
past they've double dipped, and I don't know if it's because this year they have a UCI license, but this year they had no one in amateur nats and they only raced pro nats, which like a lot of teams double dipped or like muddied that, and they
yeah,
decidedly said we're doing the pro nats. So I'll give them some points there
yeah. That's
for
an
sure.
honorable move.
Yeah,
We've been critical of. Look, we're gonna be fair on Legion on this show. When they do
right,
something good, we're gonna give them credit, and when they do something goofy, we're gonna call them on it.
right,
That's our official stance.
yeah. I'm gonna skip over to the time trial results.
Yeah,
So for the time trial and for the men, we have Corey Lockwood in first.
unsurprising. Former winner. Yeah,
Not at all. Josh Lebo for CS Fellow in second. Kind of
don't know
surprising
him.
to
Yeah,
me. I don't know him, but CS Fellow is usually pretty strong with the TT and road race squads. So, you know,
yeah,
him wearing that jersey kind of says he was probably pretty good. We just don't know him. And then Brock Mason, who we've talked about a ton on this show, he's regional to us. He
yeah,
rounded out the podium for third.
yeah. He was the breakthrough rider of of Speed Week last year, and then
Yep.
definitely like delivered on that this season consistently. Matt Guevara, another guy we've talked about a ton, regional to us, was what, fifth in that race, that time trial.
Um, Guevara was fifth. Yeah.
Yeah, I knew he was up there, and he's another just like a name, a guy who keeps making us look smart because we were mentioning him early on, and then he just keeps
Right.
being like in those results. So I'm
Right.
gonna continue to point out whenever we're right. Um, we want to move over to the Pro Nats side.
Yep.
I guess the place to start here is, we're a little bit crit focused on this show, so we're gonna talk. I feel like we got to talk about the women's crit, right?
Yep.
Since that's where the controversy was. There was some big controversy. So, you know, this is the yin and yang of our stance on Legion. Uh, Legion seemed, was it Alexis or Kendall? One of them on the last lap was unhappy with having the door shut on them, which is ironic. We went over the whole door shutting saga, last time. But I watched this finish many, many times. It's Corinne Lebecki, formerly Corinne Rivera, a rider that I've seen her win Sunny King in person a bunch of times. She has like
Yep.
72 national championships when you go back
Yeah.
to her like U23 junior track across all the disciplines she's raced. She's in the world
Yep.
tour now, came back for pro nationals. But on the last lap of the crit, she basically attacks early, gets over the top, and just holds it. And Legion seemed to feel like they had been done dirty. But I watched this finish a bunch of times, and I cannot even figure out what corner they're mad about. Like I can't. I don't know. What were your thoughts on this?
I thought it was totally clean. I didn't see anything that I thought there was a reason to be mad about. I guess maybe I want to say it was corner three. They She kind of like went barrier to barrier as Kendall was trying to come up the outside, and I think maybe that's where like Kendall was
You
like,
think?
well, she shut the door on me, and so like I think Kendall was saying, okay, are we just not allowed to shut the door at all anymore? Like, so I think that's
Sure.
where she was
Yeah.
mad, you know?
Maybe the frustration is like I just got in trouble for this, and now someone else is doing it. I think the
Right.
difference though is the abruptness. Like we read that
Yeah.
rule on the last show, and it's that you're not allowed to make an abrupt move or a quick lateral move. It's the speed of the move. But I also think there's a level of like intent there. Like if you are deviating your line in a way that the only purpose of that deviation is to stop someone coming behind you, which is like pretty clear, right? Like if you're
Yeah.
going on a straight line and you're making your line longer by like swinging out wide right or swinging, one way or the
Yep.
other, you're making your distance to the line longer, and the only thing that could be doing is stopping someone coming around you. Like that's clear. But
Yep.
watching the finish of this women's race, Corinne just took the fast line the whole time. She took
Yeah.
the places she took a wide line. It's because that was the fastest line, and there was also never a moment. There's a argument on shutting the door where like I guess I can see it sometimes as being potentially egregious if the other rider comes alongside, but there's never a point in that finish where I felt like the Legion rider is alongside her. Like there's never even a point
Right.
where they're shoulder to shoulder and someone takes them to the barrier.
No, Corinne had like her bars were always in front of Kendall's bars. Like,
Not even just
and
her
but
bars, her
Kendall,
wheels.
right, right, like,
Like her back wheel was in front of
yeah,
Kendall's front wheel.
right. Like, I'm saying is like in my mind, like using the bar, like if my bar's in front of somebody, I've won the corner. Like, there wasn't even a moment where Kendall was even approaching winning in the corner.
Yeah.
So like,
I will, to double back to something we talked about previously, the crash that took Ty Magner, Robin Carpenter down
yeah,
a while ago. I've seen a couple more angles of that and heard a few more people talking about it. And I do think that ACG rider was I always said they were owed, like they needed to apologize for sure. I think they were
Yeah,
even more in the wrong than I thought they were at the time. That head-on angle was like foreshortening it, and I couldn't really see. The other thing I hadn't seen is that I thought that ACG rider made the corner, but he actually
yeah,
like clips Ty and then he crashes. And the ACG
yeah,
rider that won was actually like 4 or 5 wheels back. So,
yeah.
with all that stuff in mind, I
Right,
do want to amend. Again, I'm not just coming down on Legion on everything. I think
right.
on that one specifically, Legion was, if they were to blame it all,
Yeah,
10%,
yeah.
20%.
I definitely agree with you. As we got more info, like we kind of right, it was like the week before, like 2 days after that happened that we made the show, and like we as we got more information, like we're allowed to change our opinions on stuff as we get more information, right? Um, and that's sort of the crash I was thinking of when I was saying like at no point,
Yeah, if you have your bars in front.
right. But
Yeah.
like Kendall was never even competitive for the corner, really. Like she was
Yeah.
trying, she was like sprinting, she was trying, but I think that's the difference between like being the World Tour and being like a really, really good US racer, right? Like Crain was that much stronger. She was able to take the corners that much better that it really wasn't even a contest. And I think maybe Kendall thought, she again, I just got in trouble for this, but it was a
Yeah.
total different situation. Crain was just taking the
Right.
fastest lines make and Kendall just couldn't come around
Yeah,
them.
it would be different if there was a straight and Corinne had looked over her shoulder, seen her
Right.
coming, and then swerved over to stop her. Like that would be
Right.
kind of a 1-for-1, but we didn't really have that 1-for-1. Moving over to the men's race, really going to focus on the crit here, but Luke Lamperti, like I hate that we don't see him racing in America. He races for Trinity, which is the team that Tom Pidcock came from, Cameron Mason, really good like I'm trying to think of like an American analog for what Trinity is, but there really like isn't. I don't know. Trinity's pretty awesome. They're
Yeah.
multidisciplinary. They have cool kits. they're
Right.
they're just awesome.
They're they're pretty unique. Like I don't know if there's a likeness to them at all, really.
Yeah,
Um,
but they're a
like
British team. They're like
yep.
domestic elite, right?
They're like
They're like
whatever they're equivalent to like Pro Connie in the UK, like
sure,
or like they're like highest level in the UK. That's not UCI or like Pro Connie is what they are.
yeah. But
Yep.
Lamperti is American and he races for them, and basically for
Yep.
the last 3 years has come back over pretty much just to do American Pro Nats and won the crit,
Yep.
just like freestyling it every time, which is
Yep.
kind of insane. Like maybe the best crit freelancer. Pretty amazing given that I don't think he's racing a ton of crits either. Like that's not what Trinity mainly does. Although Trinity,
No. There's
multidisciplinary, but
there's decent crit racing in the UK. There's like I think they
Chris,
call it the Tour series maybe,
there's
and
that.
that's
There's Crystal
like
Palace also.
yeah. So I think he's racing some crits, but Trinity is definitely more of like a World Tour feeder or like UCI cross feeder kind of team. Um, but I think he's racing some crits, but not the volume of like your Legion or ACG.
Trinity has like an XC mountain bike squad too, right? I think that's what
I
I think
think
was is Blevins was Blevins with them.
Blevins was, but Blevins was racing on the road for them. To
Oh,
like
okay. He
Blevins was
was
like on them, but he was like racing the road as well, and decided he didn't want to race road and left them.
got it.
So I think he was like trying to do both because they are multidisciplined, but
Yeah.
I think he was like, actually, I just want to race a mountain bike.
Yeah. I understand that coming from having raced crits all year and then racing the mountain bike last
Right,
weekend, my back
right.
was destroyed. Um,
It was brutal. It was
but yeah,
refreshing though,
Lamperti.
but yeah, Lamperti. I will say, like what we saw with Pronats is like that last two laps, Legion wasn't able to control. They were trying, right? They were trying to do the
Mm-hmm.
Legion thing, but they didn't quite have that control because you see Colby Simmons there in third, who's on the Jumbo Visma U23 squad. Then you have Brendan Feary right there, like mixing it
Yeah.
up. Like they didn't have control. Not Cameron Mason, Luke Lamperti, like really took advantage of some of the chaos and Legion not being able to fully organize. And with Crit Nats, like it's that corner three. If you win that corner, I'm sorry, like you win the crit. So
Yeah.
he makes a really good move here going into corner four, like attacks. I believe that's Sam Boardman on the outside, takes the corner from him and just wins outright. Has a huge gap just from taking that corner so well. He's able to coast in while everyone else is sprinting to the line. Um,
Yeah.
really, really good move. Like probably the best crit racer maybe in the world if you had to like put a name to it, you know?
Yeah, I wish we saw more of. I would love to see a race where like we have Trinity is in the race and they have Lamperti, and
Yep.
then we had like Alec Briggs and his Techers team were
Oh,
there,
that'd be sweet. Yeah.
and like Legion was there. I'd love to see like the and that DCC, the German team with the
Yep.
German champion, like
Yep.
that would be really cool. Um, yeah, that finish in the men's crit though, Legion's getting a lot of flack it seems like for not having won anything, but they are a little bit short staffed. I mean, Justin and Corey changed their Belize nationality
Mm-hmm.
now. They've changed their registration, so they don't have them. I believe they have the champion on the men's and women's side from Mexico on Legion currently. So
Yep.
like there are several Legion's
Yeah.
several of their top people are not American. So then
But
they're going up against like the World
yeah,
Tour guys that are a step above but have no teammates, and then like full squads that are fully American.
right. And I mean, honestly, that I feel like in the road race they really punched above what I think people were expecting because all the time we're hearing, oh, Legion's not actually strong. If they had to race anybody for real, like
Yeah,
they wouldn't do anything. And then I guess I'm pivoting to the road race now for the
yeah,
men. Like there was a
let's
break
do it.
up the road with Tyler Williams and Quinn Simmons. Brandon McNulty was chasing them down with Tyler Stites
Yep.
from Project Echelon. Huge ride from Tyler Stites.
Yeah.
Basically, with like 2 laps to go, Brandon McNulty attacks from what was remaining of the Peloton. Tyler Stites follows, sticks his wheel, is contributing to the chase.
Yeah, he was
They
taking
get
big pulls.
yeah, they get close to Tyler Williams and Quinn Simmons, but like Quinn being one of the best like rouleurs in the world tour, like he's a really talented rouleur, and so he's able to just ride away, and he ended up winning. But Tyler Williams being able to ride with him up until and respond to some attacks, like
Yeah,
I wouldn't have predicted that to happen. So I
me
think
either.
you know the gripe of Legion being, oh, they're not actually that strong. Well, Tyler Williams took
Yeah,
turns with World Tour guys and helped hold off Brendan McNulty, who's one of the best time trialists in the World Tour, anyways.
yeah. I
Like,
think that
you
that
know,
ride definitely shows because that is a constant, and I've pointed this out as being like one of the unfair criticisms that I think has led Legion to be so combative as they are now. Like
yeah,
not to excuse anything, but they do get that criticism of like, oh, they just race parking lot crits, and like if they got to race anybody real, they're not that good. But he was holding his own with Quinn Simmons, and there's like a non-zero chance that Quinn wins the stage of the Tour de France. You know, he's
right.
you are seeing him on the Tour de France coverage this week,
Yeah.
which you know I think
I
that
mean, yeah, you saw him leading out. His teammate is Mads Pedersen
Pedersen, yeah,
for a green jersey sprint. Like he's on the front of the peloton leading somebody out. Like he's
mm-hmm.
really good. You
That's the
know.
top level. Like
Yeah.
there's nowhere to go up from there in road cycling. So
Right.
yeah, just the fact that you could like be in that Venn diagram shows the level for sure. I've got, we're gonna steer mostly clear of tour talk, but I do have one more tour related thing, but we'll get there. We're not there yet.
All right. All right.
Um, we didn't say it explicitly, but Quinn Simmons won the road race for the men, which is what you expect on this course. It's a really hard selective course in Knoxville with a pretty steep.
Yep.
I think it gets up to like 20% climb every lap. They do multiple
It's
laps.
it's
It's
brutal.
yeah, high
Yeah.
teens percent for sure.
Yeah. Tyler
It's
Williams second, and then Tyler Stites third, which Tyler Stites beat Brendan McNulty for that podium. So like huge ride for Tyler
yeah,
Stites. I'd like to see him in the Stars and Stripes. I'd like to see him if he wants to go to Europe. I think he's talented enough to. I think he's proven he's talented enough to.
yeah,
and he's grown with Project Echelon, and they've really helped develop him.
Yeah, I would not be surprised if we saw Tyler Stites, if not going to like a human powered health, going to a team that races some of the smaller UCI races with World Tour teams, like that kind of
Yeah,
situation.
yeah,
Um, I do like talking about wishing Tyler Stites got the jersey. That takes me back to the year that Johnny Brown won Pro Nats, someone we talked about earlier, talked about a lot on this channel,
yeah.
but currently on Blazers. But back when he was on Action Haggis Berman, which is Eddie Merckx's son's team, Axel Merckx's development team.
Yep.
Johnny Brown was like basically unknown to me and won on this course, and that was against EF had guys and the World Tour guys had come in, and it's such a hard course you can't fake it, and he still
Yeah.
pulled it off, which is pretty incredible.
Yeah.
So I love to see that, but this race, you expect to see a guy like Quinn right away from all of the non-World Tour guys, right?
Right. Like you kind of expect a World Tour guy is going to win that jersey. So when it doesn't happen, like it's pretty special.
Yeah, it's exciting. Um, I guess let's move on to NCL. Do we want to talk about that now?
Yeah, let's go. Let's hit some NCL updates because there is some stuff to talk about there. It's been quiet on the NCL front,
Other than their
but
teams being pretty good and being at all the races we've been talking about.
which is something everyone said was not going to be the case too. Like everyone has said the NCL teams are going to be trash, and they're actually really good.
Yeah. And I would say that's the biggest, like, if I'm going to give NCL kudos on anything, I think the biggest thing is just that they have four, really, when you go across men's and women's, like, well supported teams that are showing up to things and
Yeah,
doing well, making the racing more interesting, and seems like a good setup for the riders, too.
yeah, for sure. Everyone's getting paid. I guess the big thing with NCL that was just announced by like a cycling news article, which I thought was a weird platform for that to get released on. But the Washington D.C. race, what was supposed to be the finale, has now been pulled from the calendar. It's no longer, so Atlanta is going to be the final race of the season. Basically, the reasoning was that pulling the race allowed them to focus more on 2024 and make sure things were better for 2024, which is PR speak, really.
Yeah,
Because like whenever I hear the word "we're pivoting to this," like I know it's not,
right.
right?
That was the thing they were getting ripped for, is that the article said, like, pivoting to three races, and it's like, yeah, it's called canceling a race. Like, that's such a that's the
Right,
thing that's bothered me about NCL. One of the things that's bumped me, like, from the beginning, is how often they have those, like, real PR speak kind of things. Honestly, for me, it's not necessarily a bad thing, because come September, I'm gonna want to be paying attention to cyclocross anyway. So I
right,
don't know. I think that's too late for crits to be running, and I have heard talk that basically, like, they wanted to do it somewhere around the mall, and the date they had picked, there was already at least one running race that day, so there was conflict for the date. And but yeah,
yeah,
of course there's a million things going on because it's Washington D.C., so it's going to be
right, like,
hard to organize a new thing there.
yeah. So, especially like yeah, in September with it like being an election year, kind of like it's just 2024 being like somewhat of an election year. Like, there's no way. So I think like the pivoting words tricky. Like they're trying to make it spin into a positive, but it's really like, hey, we couldn't pull this off, and they tried to spin into, well, we're going to make it bigger and better for 2024. So we'll see what actually
Sure,
happens with it.
maybe, yeah.
But maybe maybe it is bigger and better for 2024. But
So
we're left with three.
Atlanta is the last one now, and
Yep.
I think we're planning to be there, right? There's
Yeah.
also some news on the Atlanta front. It got moved. It was gonna be somewhere, and it got moved to the car racing track. What is this
Yes.
track it's on now?
Yeah. So it was going to be at Centennial Olympic Park, which is where the CNN Center is and Mercedes-Benz Stadium, like one of the bigger areas of Atlanta. They moved it to the Porsche Experience Test Track, which is South Atlanta, kind of near the airport. So it's going to be a closed course. I actually looked at the map for the Porsche experience, and it's going to be really cool. There's some U-turns, some really tight corners, not four corners. I think it's going to be one of the better racing, some of the better racing. But yeah, so they're moving it to the Porsche experience.
So that brings me to the other Tour de France. I feel like I couldn't let this go by, but stage 3 of the Tour de France finished on a motor racing circuit, which immediately took me to American racing. You know, like we've got a race. Some of our guys are going to do Georgia games this weekend,
Yep.
which is on the motor racing circuit. It's pretty common. Like there used to be a crit in Huntsville on the drag strip, and we would go out one lane and do a 180 and come down the other lane in the drag strip.
Yep.
It was a race at Barber Motorsports Park here in town, but it's pretty common that we
Driveway.
do racing.
I mean,
yeah,
driveway's a track. Like,
Sea Otter. There's a bunch of them.
yeah.
But when I think of racing on a motorway circuit, I actually tend to think that's safer. Like it's normally a lot safer because those corners are, you know, there's no potholes, there's no road furniture. The corners are never 90 degrees. They are the way they are in a crit. They're sweeping, flowing corners. But Tour de France Stage 3 this year finished on a motor racing circuit, and they had all kinds of drama in the finish. And I was trying to just like wrap my head around what was the deal with all these crashes. And the best I can come up with, it's a couple of things. One is that this stage just wasn't raced particularly hard, so there were just a lot of fresh guys. And the combination of the fact that it's a wide road where you could move up in a way that a lot of these World Tour finishes you can't, because they're finishing in towns a lot of times where the road's really narrowed down. So there was like more washing machine. I think there was maybe a thing where like American racers are used to this type of finish, and this is what we're always. I mean, we also crash some, but it's you don't normally see 3 crashes this close together like you did in this finish.
Right.
So it's partially that they're used to a different type of finish, and so a lot of the trains that normally would have been locked in the back and just gone like, we're 20 wheels back, it is what it is. They kind of went like, oh, we got room to move up, and they moved wide and moved up. And then there's also the fact that like all of these corners are kind of these like sweeping, bending corners, and there were no buildings or anything to judge off of. So I think if you were like farther back in the Peloton and you're surrounded by guys, it was like tough to see where the road was going. Whereas if you're in a more traditional stage of the tour finish, you're going down a street, there's buildings on both sides, you can kind of see where the limits are, you know? So you have guys going like 5 wide through corners, and they can't necessarily see where the edges are, and things are kind of pinching. I don't know. But yeah, just an American type of thing coming to the World Tour, and it did make me think like, are we going to see an insane number of crashes in NCL on the Atlanta track? I don't know.
I hope not. There's a U-turn on the track, which I think will help kind of put a speed limit to it, which may help.
Yeah, that's counterintuitive. Like U-turn, you would think if there's a hairpin, like, oh, that's going to cause crashes. But yeah, generally in my experience, if there is a crash on the hairpin, it's the individual person who pedals too hard or just slips out on the U-turn.
Yeah.
But it's not a like people respect the U-turn. You're not going 5 deep through the U-turn. You're lined up single file, and one person who crashes doesn't cause a pile up.
Right. So I think it may make the race safer because like we're used to wider finishes in America. We're used to wider roads. There's a U-turn. Some of the corners are pretty tight and tricky, and we tend to respect those. And there's enough straightaway where like if people are like trying to like motor away and really put it down, they have space to. So I think it might be safer. Plus the way the pits are set up, there's actually like a pit lane with that, so you won't have so much pit chaos like you kind of did in Miami. I think it will make the racing safer.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, like I said, I feel like whenever I see that a race is on a motor circuit, I normally think that's going to be a safer race. I think the Tour de France stage was a little bit of an outlier for a lot of reasons.
Yeah. I think the the Atlanta race being on a race course like the Porsche Experience track is going to be more along the lines of what their long term vision is. So for people who haven't heard, the Atlanta race is going to be like a VIP only ticketed event. So like usually in crits, like you can't ticket a downtown area, so like you walk up and watch the crit for free. You're gonna have to pay, and I think they're short sighted in making it VIP only. I think they should sell like $10, $20 tickets to the stands, but it's like a $200 VIP pass just to watch the race.
It's going to be a tough
So
sell.
it is. But you and I have press passes, so we're good.
Yeah.
So, so I think that's kind of what their long term vision is, making them ticketed using like actual race, like pre made race courses and charging people to come in. I think it's sort of like a test, like feeler for what their long term goal might be.
Yeah. It does also simplify something we saw in the first race, which is the pit exchange thing. Like there's a
Yep.
predetermined area for pit exchanges, so there's not going to be as much confusion around where and how that happens. It's pretty cleanly set up for pit exchanges
Yeah.
because it's a
Yeah, for sure.
racetrack.
And that was from the racers. Like the pit situation was a complaint we heard from the racers where it was like too narrow. People were like coming and going and slowing down in the same like lane. Like, so
Yeah,
I think having more space for the pit like will help resolve that.
I honestly expected the pit to be more chaotic than it was. Maybe it was more
Yeah,
chaotic than we saw on the coverage because we weren't seeing the pit the whole time. But I
yeah,
expected there to be some pit ingress egress related crashing going on, and we didn't have that. So
yeah,
I think if that was as bad as it gets, it'll be pretty good. I think it'll get better from there. And I think a lot more
yep.
teams, like we heard this from Matt Winstead at Texas Roadhouse, kind of like didn't have their mind around how the substitutions were going to work. Or I heard this
Yep.
from uh who is it that also races? He raced for Supra bars.
Oh, Wesley Alford.
Yeah, I was not
Oh,
Wes. I was thinking of
oh,
Masters national champion. Yeah,
Owen Shot.
Owen Schott.
Yep.
Both of them though, Wes and Owen, talking about how like after the fact they really understood how to use like pit exchanges and stuff. But I think that's true of Texas Roadhouse and from the Mike's Bikes video about it, the NorCal video about it. It seems like they, in retrospect, were like, oh, we could have used the pit exchanges differently. So I think we're going to see that become more of a factor and become more frequent.
Yeah. Yeah, I think a lot of the teams missed the boat on not using the pits effectively. So,
Mm-hmm.
like we kind of mentioned this before the season started, there's going to be a learning curve to these races. Like, unless these teams are using track riders or like have a track background, like Texas Roadhouse, they're going to struggle with the points format. They're going to try and race it like a normal crit, and the substitutions like really throwing a wrench in that. You know, maybe not using subs or not knowing how to use subs effectively. So like there's going to be a big learning curve, and I expect some of these teams that do have some like locality to them are practicing substitutions or practicing the format. At least I would hope they would be.
Yeah, yeah,
You
I
know,
hope so. I think we're still going to see the in-house NCL teams, Denver and Miami. Uh, I think we'll still see them winning, being dominant, but I don't
yep,
think that we're going to see them like absolutely wiping the floor with every other team getting three, four times as many points as the next closest team. I think we're going to see
right,
that gap close, but maybe not other teams necessarily overtaking them in this season. But this is going to be like the
yep,
Legion year thing. Remember, like when Legion came in doing the Legion thing, there was a whole season where they just wiped the floor with everybody and no one was close. And then the next season, people were closer. And now we're in this like Legion is still a very good team, but they're not just head and shoulders above everyone else. Other teams are winning about as much.
right. Like the NCL teams had a team camp where they practiced the format. The other
Mm-hmm.
teams did not, and that's where. Plus, like the NCL teams have like coaches that are hired and paid to figure out how to effectively race the format, and the other teams are
Right.
like, okay, we're doing this, but we're also like racing Snake Alley and Athens, and like we don't have the time, budget, or resources to
Sure.
like do that, right?
yeah, their key focus, even if they want to think about it or whatever, their main focus isn't the NCL races.
Right.
Mentioning though that Legion is not just head and shoulders above everybody else. I think that's a good place to pivot over to the other thing that was going on concurrently to nationals, which is Tour of America's Dairyland,
Yep.
which was, I believe, 9 days of race, 9 races over 11 days. Legion wasn't at all of them, but Legion did show up to a couple. I think the big story from this one, a team that we have not from the series overall. There's like a few storylines we've kind of talked about here. There were no streams for any of these races, so we were following along on social media, watching GoPro footage, cobbling it together from just looking at the results. So we don't have as much like in-depth knowledge of exactly how the racing went down.
Yep.
But the thing that I saw that I was shocked by is Work Hard, Be Humble, which is a new team for this year. JP Prim out of Atlanta, I believe, like started that team.
Yep.
Team I've raced with or raced against and seen at races this season, a little bit here and there, but just not had a huge success until this weekend. But yeah, Caesar Arias beating Justin Williams, going Cesar Arias, Justin Williams, Alfredo Rodriguez. Like, that's a big podium, and Work Hard, Be Humble on top of it.
Yep.
And then that was the East Troy Cycling Classic. Sorry if I don't know all 9 races by heart, but
Right.
they were able to back that up by getting multiple podiums over the course of the week. Justin did also get a win at Manitowoc. We had Justin in first, Danny Summerhill in second. That's kind of what you expect. Dusan Kalaba, a guy that
Yep.
really showed up at Speed Week, was in fourth there. But yeah, we had a couple of other podiums from Work Hard, Be Humble. So yeah,
Oh,
maybe
going back, Preston I was in 5th at the race that Justin won,
sure. Yeah,
which he's registered under Piedmont College, which is a collegiate team, but he's on that Work Hard Be Humble team. So like
right,
and then Caesar Arias being 6th right behind him, also Work
right.
Hard. Like, so yeah, they were up there for sure. Which
Yeah,
they haven't
Preston.
been as much earlier this season. So maybe they're
Preston also
peaking
did
later.
the. I think I finished pretty close to Preston at that Nashville, the training crit I did in Nashville a few weeks ago.
Yep.
But yeah, he's a Tennessee guy. Yeah, big week for Work Hard, Be Humble. I believe I also saw JP Prim had a top 10 one of these days. I think the other story, there were a lot of like getting a result where teams that had like been searching for it a lot, but a really big one was Nick Carter, Automatic Abus. Automatic did the whole thing,
Yep.
really did a lot of work on the front from what I was seeing across the board. But Nick Carter went solo in this race really early on. This is the West Alice Cheese Wheel Classic. Great name for. I'll remember that one. Great name
Right.
for a race. He went solo, and Automatic did a lot of work to patrol the front and the group behind. And yeah, he won solo, which is pretty awesome, given that Tyler Williams, who we spoke about earlier, was there. Um, yeah, Justin was there. Iman Lucas from Aviators. Like, this is a big, serious field. It did overlap with nationals, but hitters definitely.
Yeah, tons of hitters. Lucas Bourgon, he was in. I hope I'm pronouncing that last name. He's like an Austin, Texas guy. Was on Hot Tubes. Is now on like a European team racing. Came back for Pro Nats. Like used. And it's cool to see him like not just do Pro Nats, but also like do some races that were nearby.
Yeah.
It's always
I'm
nice
also
to see
noticing
that.
Wolfgang Brandl is no longer on Skyline. So
Yep.
in my mind, that's like he was like the only guy on Skyline that was getting real results. So that sort of confirms to me that Skyline is on the way down.
Yeah, that's something I had noticed because we were talking about them prior to NCL starting, being like, hey, like they'll be able to compete. Like they're a UCI team, they race all over the place, and they really haven't lived up to expectations. They haven't performed really at any racing this year. So I don't know if I would expect to see them around in 2024.
Right. Yeah, we'll see what happens with that team. They've been on a slow backslide for a long time, but there are teams that happens to, and then you'd find out. Like I always feel that way about Team Type One,
Yep.
but then sometimes you hear about them and it's like, oh yeah, they were at the I don't know some race you've never heard of in a UCI 2.1 and they're doing okay. Like sometimes
Yeah.
those teams just like pivot to something that's like a pocket of racing that I'm not following. So I don't know. Maybe
Right.
that'll happen with Skyline.
Right. There seems to be a lot of like late season Central American and South American racing. That's all like 2.1 that we don't really follow here in America.
We sort of can't follow it.
Right.
There's not streams of it. There's not English language coverage. So it's like
Right.
unless somebody posts that they want it on Instagram, it's hard to find.
Right. And a lot of those teams that have been struggling all year race really well there and get enough results to like go to the sponsors and say, hey, we won these races and stay around. So it's possible they get a lot of late season races that wins that way.
Yeah, for sure. So there was an AC to like connect this to the bigger narrative and everything else going on. There was an ACC race at one of the 9 races of Dairyland was an ACC race. Um, let's see, you got the results for that one. I don't want to misspeak here.
Oh, I don't. Hold on.
It looks like Miami Knights, though. Speak of the devil, it looks like Miami Knights took the win on the men's side. Alfredo Rodriguez. Here we go. I got the results.
Okay, cool.
At least for the men. Alfredo Rodriguez number 1, Brian Gomez number 2, and then Florenz Nauer from 5411. 5411 is one of those teams that like I don't know anything about, but I'll see them just like every now and then. They had guys at Sunny King, and they're always like better than I think they would be, for a team that like I don't know anything about.
Right.
Yeah, nothing super surprising outside of that. Dusan Kalaba down in 7th, but no major changes in the ACC standings coming out of that. ACC on the men's side, we've got Alfredo Rodriguez in 301, having overtaken Danny Summerhill with 261, and then Gomez in 3rd. Looks like that's still going to be a pretty good battle. I think Summerhill is going to keep going for that. Summerhill also is in the lead of the sprint competition in ACC. It seems like Summerhill is the guy who, like Summerhill this year is focused on it the way that Gibbons was like in 2019. Like
Right.
Summerhill is really all in.
Yeah, and Summerhill has a pretty commanding lead for the point series. Like I don't like. I'm sure there are enough points available for Dusan Kalaba to catch him, but
Oh,
like,
I'm talking about for ACC in general. So I mean, I
yeah,
think
yeah.
he wants the
No,
he's got the
I agree.
sprint locked down,
Yeah.
but I think he also wants the overall.
Oh, I'm tracking. Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think depending on because NCL sort of hitting in August a little bit heavier, so maybe if they end up missing some ACC races later in the year, um, Summerhill can really make up a lot of ground on the points there.
Yeah, speaking of which, over on the women's side, we've got Andrea Sear from Miami Knights leading the women's overall points in ACC. And yeah, I wonder, like you said, with the final 2 NCL races both coming next month, I wonder if we're going to see Miami Knights missing any ACC races, and that would really shake up the standings here. But also, like, I don't think Legion is fully committed to ACC either. They tend to kind of
Right.
pick and choose which ones. So I don't know what would happen on the women's side
It would,
if Knights were to not show up. I don't know where that would leave us.
I guess, DNA maybe.
Yeah, I'm surprised I
Like,
don't see DNA in the top. I'm gonna go to the full results here because
yeah,
I would think DNA would have somebody up there, but Yeah,
Yeah, I would
DNA
go to
is,
Olivia Cummins.
yep,
So
131. So she's not far off those Legion riders.
no,
But that
not at
is
all.
like half of what Sear has. So yeah, that's a
Yeah,
going to be a tough road to hoe for DNA. But that's weird because my perception was that DNA had a better season than that. Like, not that they
well,
had
I
been
think
winning,
they,
but they had been
I think
consistent.
they have, but like they've been consistently like just there, and then Legion's been like trading wins between the girls, and like so they've been able to get a lot of points. Like because if you look at the Legion women, it's like 171, 148, 143, 140, like 139. So I think they're
Mm-hmm.
all just kind of like it's the Legion train. They know they're going to do what they do, so they're just kind of like, oh, we'll give the win to Sky. Oh, here's Sam, Kendall, Alexis.
Yeah,
Like they're just kind of
Legion
trading
has
it.
been trading the win around.
Yeah. So that's probably why, even though DNA has been like second, third, fourth all the time, the point accrual isn't quite there.
Yeah, that's. I think you're probably right about that. So, talking ACC, we've got Boise Twilight coming up this weekend. You took a look at the start list. You got any thoughts there?
Yeah, I think it'll be there's gonna be a lot more West Coast teams. We're saying Empire bring a full squad. Empire being like we share some sponsors with them, so that's pretty cool.
Yeah,
Domestique Coffee, um, Legion's bringing a full squad. Aviators bringing a full squad. Um, Blazers bringing a full squad, and then like we're going to see Cliff family, so the Mallory brothers, the Cliff family teams bringing a full squad. We don't have like a full registration yet, but just seeing those teams bringing full squads, I imagine that Boise is going to fill out up to that 120 rider cap. But a lot of the East Coast teams don't haven't registered, and I don't know if they will. I think it'll be more West Coast heavy, um, kind of like I don't know if we'll see some of the East Coast heavy teams there.
yeah. So my question: are we gonna have a stream to watch of this one?
When I checked the website,
Oh,
there was a stream link there,
yeah. It looks like
so
there
we should
is.
have one.
Okay, cool. So we will be watching that. I mean, if possible, I might watch it live, do a live watch along on the channel. I don't know how the timing is going to work. I haven't done the Mountain Standard Time conversion over here, but that might be possible. If not, we'll definitely watch it and we'll have some deeper analysis on the actual minutia of that racing for the next show.
Right. I feel like the last few races we haven't been able to like really dive into what happened because there hasn't been much like coverage we can watch and consume from like a bird's eye view, you know?
Right.
Like we
Yeah,
got
we've been
Tulsa,
having
but
yeah.
we've been kind of having to like here's this GoPro footage, like kind of guess based off what we know and the greater
Uh-huh.
storylines and context. So it'll be nice to
Yeah.
have one we can actually watch.
Yeah, I think people like it when we dive in a little bit more to the nitty-gritty of the racing. So, I
Yep.
look forward to doing that next time for sure, and we'll have a week to like mull it over too. So hopefully we'll have some good takeaways, good analysis. I might go race Georgia games this weekend. I haven't decided. I might do the crit on Saturday, so maybe
It'll be fun.
see me out there. Some of our guys will be out there though. Yeah, coming to the end of road. When the tour comes on, I kind of know it's time for me to get back off road and start thinking about cyclocross. So I'm starting to shift my personal riding to off road stuff to do some cyclocross,
Right. Like
winding down.
right for us in like Alabama and Georgia, it's kind of winding down. It's kind of the end of
Yeah,
our season a little bit. Like there's some racing in late July, August, but for the most part, our road season is pretty much wrapped up. There's the state champs in August, so that's kind of the cap on our road
yeah,
season before cross and gravel sort of starts to leak in for us.
right. My training for since it is late August for the crit state championships. My training for that is going to be my training for cross. That's like the same build since those are going to be
Yeah,
right up against each other. But yeah,
thirty
we'll be
thirties
doing
and
some
all that.
racing.
So
Yep,
yeah,
exactly. We'll be racing. We'll be doing some local training crits and definitely watching the rest of the series. The good news is, I guess that's going to give me more time to not be like editing my own footage and watching these races, thinking about all the national level crits that are somehow still to come. So
Right.
everybody, thanks for watching. Check it out. We'll talk more about all this stuff next time. Appreciate
Right.
it.
Peace.